Welcome to the Right Academy. I'm Matthew R. Miller. You know, Stephen King, in his book on writing, said that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. Now, it's kind of his tongue-in-cheek way of saying be careful of overusing ly words, and I'll explain that in a moment. But some new writers think that means you should never use adverbs. I've actually seen writers say I eliminate all adverbs from my writing, which is ridiculous. Because number one, no, you don't, because you don't realize what adverbs includes. Number two, that's ridiculous. You can't eliminate an entire part of a language and be a good writer. What Stephen King meant, and I agree with him here, is that, adverbs in English, our basic way of forming them is to add ly, right, to an adjective. So he runs quickly, right? She said loudly. And Stephen King's point, which I agree with, is that instead of adding ly adverbs to weaker kind of verbs, use a stronger verb. Instead of saying he ran quickly, say he sprinted, he zoomed, he raced. Instead of saying she said loudly, say she screamed, she yelled, she clamored. This is stronger writing, right? It's stronger. It feels better, more satisfying by using fewer words. Now, but ly words are not the only kind of adverbs we have in English. So it's okay to use them sometimes, just don't overuse them. I've often given this example. If I had a character simply say, sure, he said, sure, you would have no way of knowing whether he's being sarcastic or serious unless he said, sure, sarcastically, you see. So there are times when you need ly words. Now, the kinds of adverbs we have in English, we have adverbs of manner, how something is done, quickly, slowly. Adverbs of time, he did it yesterday, he did it today. Remember, adverb just describes a verb, that's all it does. Adverbs of place, he stopped by here, she ran outside. Adverbs of frequency, always, often, sometimes, never. Adverbs of degree, extremely, very, quite, things like that. And then we have a special class called conjunctive adverbs, and we'll deal with that in another lesson, but however, therefore, besides, it's more of a grammatical issue. That being said, you can use adverbs cleverly and have them add a lot to your writing without just saying verb, ly word, he said loudly. Okay, so the way to do this is to use adverbial phrases and clauses. In other words, groups of words together that act as adverbs. Let me give you an example. I called the restaurant and made a reservation to ensure they had a table. That phrase, to ensure they had a table, says, why I called the restaurant. And that's an adverbial phrase, even though it doesn't seem like it. If I said, I like to sleep in total darkness. In total darkness is an adverbial phrase. It's describing how I like to sleep. If you say, every day at 6 o'clock p.m. I eat dinner, at 6 o'clock, that's an adverbial phrase. He lives in an apartment in New York. Lives in an apartment in New York is an adverbial phrase. See, you can use these phrases and clauses cleverly and well. You can describe how the verbs work without having to say ly and ly only. Now, I write horror, and there's a lot of cliches you see in different kinds of writing. One thing I see in horror is people often write, he looked in horror, or he screamed in horror, using that in horror. Even though that is an adverbial, phrase, clause, it's a cliche. So you want to avoid cliches. So how can you say that someone is scared while using adverbs without having to use a cliche or say ly? You could say something like this. He crept slowly and quietly around the cave. Okay, that's one way to say it, that he crept around the cave slowly, quietly. That describes how he does it. The verb crept by itself kind of implies that. You could also say, to avoid the monster whose back was turned to him, he crept around the cave. To avoid the monster is also an adverbial clause. So you have a lot of leeway to play with adverbs. The key, as with all good writing, don't overuse them. And if there is a verb you can use that says the same thing, but it's a stronger verb, use that instead. Instead of saying he walked quietly and slowly, say he crept, right? For example. Instead of saying he handed me the pen forcefully, say He thrust the pen at me. See, verbs are very useful because they describe action, as we've talked about. And in writing, you want the writing to move in the reader's mind, be a kind of series of actions. So there's a lot of ways to use adverbs to do this without just having to say ly, ly, ly. And please don't eliminate all adverbs from your writing. Please instead use them sparingly, use them correctly. Always use a verb, a strong verb if you can, but learn the different kinds of adverbs. Okay, there's a whole lot of adverbs out there that we can use that make your writing good without having to just repeat ly, ly. One thing you can do is just Google it. Say list of English adverbs, kinds of English adverbs, kind of like the things I just told you about, the adverbs of manner, time, place, that kind of stuff. Adverbial phrases, adverbial clauses. So keep that in mind, and you'll see that you can use adverbs to your advantage in your writing, and the reader often won't even realize it's an adverb. They just think it's part of the action, which is great. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video. I'm Matthew R. Miller. You're watching the Write Right Academy.